People like you do not keep $5 million in a real account. The words cut through the marble lobby like a slap. At Heritage Trust Bank, even the air froze. The man behind the counter branch manager, Paul Stanton, held up the printed withdrawal slip as if it were contaminated, his face tightening with disgust. He tore it in half with a sharp rip that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. The woman in front of him did not flinch. She stood perfectly still in a crimson blazer, hands folded around a simple black purse. Her eyes did not rise or fall. They measured him like time itself. Before we go further, let me ask you something. Have you ever been told you do not belong in a place where you signed the checks? If this moment feels familiar, stay with me. Because in the next 10 minutes, you will watch the meaning of ownership change completely. Now back to that lobby at 10:42 a.m., when dignity met ignorance under fluorescent light. The Heritage Trust branch smelled of polish and perfume, a weekday calm hiding decades of bias. Clients whispered near the espresso bar while a young security guard hovered by the doorway, hand resting on his radio. Paul's voice carried easily, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Security, keep an eye on her," he ordered. "She is trying to pull a scam." The woman did not move. She simply said, "Run my name." Her voice was soft but cut clean, a surgeon's tone. Paul laughed, shaking his head. "Ma'am, this window is for premium clients only. Do you have any idea what 5 million looks like?" He expected fear. Instead, he got silence, measured, deliberate, the kind that makes a room question itself. A few customers began recording quietly, their phones raised behind handbags. A teller at the far counter bit her lip, looking away. The woman placed her phone on the counter, screen down. "You are sure you want to continue this conversation?" she asked. Paul leaned forward, the paper scraps still in his hand. "Oh, I am sure. We get people like you every month, dressed up, acting rich, trying to play games with fake accounts." The phrase "people like you" hung in the air. It was not about class. It was about color. At that moment, the young security guard shifted uneasily. "Sir, maybe we should just verify her information first." Paul snapped, "Do not tell me how to do my job." "Oh." The woman's phone buzzed once. She glanced down, one message flashing across the screen. "Protocol ready, waiting for your call." She looked up again, calm as marble. "5 minutes from now," she said quietly. "You will wish you had asked a different question." The manager scoffed, but something in her tone unsettled him. Around them, the bank hummed with a new tension, a low electric awareness that something irreversible had just begun. The sound of the paper tearing had not yet faded when the lobby began to breathe differently. Conversations died mid-sentence. The rhythmic tap of heels on marble slowed, then stopped. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, caught between shock and curiosity. Paul Stanton, still gripping the shredded withdrawal slip, straightened his suit as if authority could be stitched back together with posture. His face flushed a deep red, not from embarrassment but from the thrill of control. "Security," he barked again. "Stand closer to the counter. We are not entertaining scams this morning." The young guard, barely 30, hesitated. His name tag read Officer Ryan Cooper. He had been on the job only 6 weeks, and this was his first confrontation that drew every eye in the building. He looked from Paul to the woman in red and felt the ground shift under rules he barely understood. She did not move. She only tilted her head slightly, as though studying a pattern in the ceiling. The light above caught the edge of her cheekbone, not as ornament but as proof of calm. When she finally spoke, her voice carried without force. "You have already called me a fraud, Mr. Stanton. Will you also deny me the dignity of being heard?" Paul's laugh echoed, sharp and rehearsed. "I do not owe explanations to imposters. You people come in here, pretending to be something you are not, and then play victim when we enforce protocol." That phrase, "you people," landed heavier than any shout. A woman in a gray suit near the teller line froze, eyes darting to her phone. She was filming now, discreet but deliberate. Another customer, a middle-aged man holding a briefcase, muttered under his breath, "This is going to blow up." The woman in red turned slightly, her voice level. "What exactly do you think I am pretending to be?" Paul leaned on the counter. "A millionaire, a business owner, someone who belongs in this lounge." "And you?" she asked. "Decide who belongs." He smirked. "That is literally my job." Her expression did not change, but something in the silence around her did. The marble floor reflected her stance, grounded and exact. Officer Cooper shifted again, uneasy. "Ma'am, maybe if you could show some identification." Paul cut him off. She already showed us her card, fake, probably stolen. The woman reached into her purse slowly, methodically, and placed a sleek black tablet on the counter. Then let us confirm. With one touch, the screen woke to a document bearing the Heritage Trust seal. Paul frowned, leaning closer. Before he could speak, the tablet emitted a soft tone, and a line of text scrolled across. Verification request sent to corporate compliance. Timestamp, 10:45 a.m. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Paul straightened. What is this supposed to prove? She met his eyes. That you have already been recorded violating 3 federal banking policies in under 5 minutes. His jaw tightened. You cannot threaten me with fake screens and buzzwords. Security, escort her out now. Officer Cooper did not move. His gaze darted between them. Sir, maybe we should wait for corporate to confirm. Paul snapped again. Now! The guard stepped forward but stopped halfway. The woman's phone lit up beside the tablet. A message blinked. Protocol 6, active. Compliance team observing. She picked it up, pressed a single button, and spoke clearly. Carla, they escalated. Continue documentation. A calm female voice answered from the speaker. Understood. Recording internal dialogue. All audio live-logged to Summit Holdings Legal. The name hit the air like a bell. Summit Holdings. Several heads turned. The woman filming gasped quietly. She whispered to the man beside her, That is the conglomerate that owns half this district's financial network. Paul's color drained slightly, but pride kept him standing. Big words, empty threats. If you really worked for a corporation like that, you would not be here dressed like that. Her lips curved, slightly, not a smile, but an understanding of how small his world was. That sentence, she said softly, will follow you longer than this job ever will. He slammed his palm on the counter. Enough! Security! Officer Cooper's radio crackled with static, then a voice from the main desk. Hold action. Corporate is requesting full review before client removal. The young guard exhaled as though someone had lifted a weight off his chest. Paul turned toward the back office, furious. Who authorized that? The woman in red spoke again, her tone steady. I did. He froze, the edges of his authority fraying. Excuse me? You wanted verification. It has arrived. Behind her, a new sound joined the tension, the faint chime of incoming emails on every branch computer. The tellers looked at their screens, confused. One of them whispered, It says internal audit. Live monitoring. The crowd thickened. Customers leaned closer, pretending to check their phones while capturing everything. Paul looked around, searching for someone to back him. Do not get carried away by theatrics. She is bluffing. The woman's phone vibrated again. Another message appeared. Incident logged under Heritage Trust misconduct. 10:48 a.m. Immediate suspension pending review. She raised her eyes to him, calm and final. You have less than 2 minutes before that email reaches your regional director. Paul blinked, the realization crawling slowly across his face. Still, he tried one last defense. You think you can walk in here, accuse me, and scare me with tech tricks? Her answer was almost a whisper. No, Mr. Stanton. I did not walk in to scare you. I walked in to remind you whose name is on the deed. Gasps fluttered across the lobby like wind through glass. Officer Cooper stepped back. The tablet chimed once more, displaying a simple confirmation line. Ownership, Vanessa Clark, Chief Executive Officer, Summit Holdings Group. And for the first time that morning, silence carried weight heavier than money. For a long heartbeat, no one moved. The light from the tall windows fell across the lobby floor, slicing the silence into sharp geometry. Behind the counter, Paul Stanton's face drained of its color. The words on the tablet were clear, undeniable, glowing like a verdict. Ownership confirmed. Vanessa Clark, Chief Executive Officer, Summit Holdings Group. But pride is slow to surrender. He swallowed, forced a dry laugh, and reached for the tablet. Enough with the theatrics, he said, voice cracking but still trying to sound sure. Anyone can fake a document. I will call corporate myself. Vanessa did not stop him. She only folded her hands and waited. The stillness around her felt intentional, like gravity she controlled. The entire bank seemed to slow to her rhythm. Paul punched the internal line on his desk phone. Get me compliance, he snapped. He waited. There was no answer. Then came the click of an automated message. This call has been rerouted to corporate oversight. Please stand by for verification. The color left his face again. Vanessa's phone buzzed softly. She answered without breaking eye contact. Yes, Carla? Corporate confirmation complete, the voice said, calm and professional. Live recording transferred to the board. Local management has been temporarily suspended from authorization privileges. A wave of murmurs rolled across the room. Every teller looked to their monitor. The system had locked out Paul's login. On the top corner of each screen flashed the same message: access restricted pending investigation. Paul stared at his terminal as if he could will it to obey. This is a mistake, he muttered. Vanessa tilted her head slightly. No, Mr. Stanton. It is an audit. The young guard, Ryan Cooper, stepped back, unsure whether to salute or apologize. He whispered, Ma'am, are you saying you actually own this branch? I own this bank, she replied, her voice steady as glass. Gasps rippled again. The woman in the gray suit lowered her phone slowly, whispering, Oh my God. Another customer, a young black man in a navy hoodie, clenched his jaw, a mix of anger and pride rising in his chest. Paul tried to recover his footing. Even if that were true, this is highly irregular. You cannot just walk in and stage a scene in front of customers. Vanessa's eyes narrowed slightly. You created this scene when you decided my balance was unbelievable. He opened his mouth, then shut it. For the first time, the words would not come. Let me explain something to you, she continued, her tone even, deliberate. When a black woman walks into her own bank and is told she does not belong, that is not irregular. That is history repeating itself. The entire room felt it the weight of what she said. Even the ceiling lights seemed dimmer now, as if the building itself were listening. In the corner, one teller, a young Latina woman named Elena Morales, spoke up, her voice trembling. Ma'am, I saw your name in our ownership directory last quarter. I thought it was just a coincidence. It was not, Vanessa said softly, and you do not have to apologize for noticing. Paul turned sharply toward Elena. Stay out of this, he snapped. You are out of line. Elena flinched but did not back down. No, sir, you are. Her words cracked the last layer of control Paul had. You think you can talk to me like that? You are a teller. You follow instructions. Vanessa interjected, her tone cool and final. Not anymore. She follows ethics. Another voice rose, a man in a tailored navy suit standing near the espresso bar. This is outrageous, he said. You cannot humiliate a manager like this in public. It is unprofessional. Vanessa turned toward him slowly. And what do you call accusing a woman of fraud because she is not wearing a diamond watch? He had no answer. Ryan Cooper's radio crackled again. A new voice came through, firm and direct. Security, do not remove the client. Confirmed ownership verified by Summit Holdings Legal. Maintain position and record remaining interactions. Ryan met Vanessa's eyes and gave a small nod. Understood. Paul's phone began to ring. He stared at the caller ID. The number was unfamiliar corporate headquarters. He hesitated, then answered. Yes, this is Stanton. His voice shook slightly. Yes, she is here. A pause. His expression shifted from defiant to pale. I understand. Another pause. Then, yes, sir. He lowered the phone slowly. They want to speak with you, he said, almost whispering. Vanessa took the handset, pressed it to her ear. Good morning, Thomas, she said calmly. Yes, I am here. Thank you for confirming. She listened for a few seconds, nodded once, then handed the phone back to Paul. You have been relieved of your duties effective immediately. Corporate will follow up for collection of property and credentials. Paul stared at her, speechless. His hands trembled as he placed the phone down. The customers were no longer whispering. They were watching openly now. Some clapped quietly. Others just stood frozen, absorbing what had happened. Vanessa turned to Elena. Please process my withdrawal request, $5 million even, and make sure Mr. Stanton's access remains restricted. Elena nodded, her hands steady now. Yes, ma'am. Paul stumbled back a step. You cannot do this. Vanessa faced him fully. I already have. He exhaled, the sound hollow, defeated. All this over a misunderstanding. She looked at him for a long moment. This was never about money, Mr. Stanton. It was about how you see people when they walk through those glass doors. The light shifted again through the lobby's tall windows, catching the red of her blazer like a banner. Her voice dropped to a quiet final note. And from this morning forward, I will make sure no one in this institution ever forgets what that looks like." Paul looked down, realizing too late that his reflection in the marble floor no longer looked like authority. It looked like consequence. Paul Stanton stood frozen, a man stripped of his script. The authority that once filled his voice had drained into silence. All around him, the lobby pulsed with quiet disbelief. No one moved, but everyone watched the tellers behind their counters, the customers near the glass walls, the security guards standing still at parade rest. The room felt less like a bank now and more like a courtroom where truth had finally arrived. Vanessa Clark stepped forward. Her heels met the marble with slow precision, each sound deliberate, controlled. She stopped just short of the counter and looked at Paul. "When you tore that paper," she said, "you did not just insult me. You ripped through every ounce of trust that keeps this building standing." He opened his mouth to respond, but the words tangled somewhere between defense and regret. Vanessa turned toward the crowd. "For anyone who is wondering," she continued evenly, "I came here today without cameras, without an entourage, without a press release. I came because I wanted to see if this institution still carried the disease it once swore it had cured." Ugh. Her tone did not rise, but every syllable reached the edges of the lobby. The crowd listened the way people listen to verdicts. A voice from the back broke through. It was an older black woman wearing a dark business coat, her hands folded around a checkbook. "And now you know the answer, child?" she said softly. Her words hung in the air, both blessing and wound. Vanessa nodded once. "Yes, ma'am, I do." Paul tried again to speak. "Miss Clark, I truly did not know who you were. If I had known, I never—" She cut him off gently, not cruelly. "That sentence is why we are here, because you would have treated me differently if you had known, and that means nothing has changed." He looked down at his hands. They were trembling slightly. Vanessa turned to Elena Morales, who was completing the withdrawal paperwork. "Please include a full transaction record and print 2 copies, she said. "Yes, ma'am." While the printer hummed, Vanessa addressed the entire staff. "Every one of you has now witnessed what bias looks like when it hides behind procedure. From this moment, I expect new training for every branch under Heritage Trust. There will be no more you people. There will be no more disbelief in competence because of color." The woman in the gray suit who had been filming lowered her phone. "May I speak?" she asked. Vanessa gestured slightly. "Go ahead." "I work for a local nonprofit that tracks cases like this," the woman said. "You have no idea how many times we hear the same story, different cities, same excuses. They always call it policy." Vanessa's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "Policy does not protect injustice. It perfects it until someone rewrites the rules." The older woman near the back whispered, "Preach, baby." Paul looked up, voice cracking. "I made a mistake. I can learn." Vanessa's gaze did not waver. "Learning is not a luxury, Mr. Stanton. It is the minimum requirement for staying human." The printer finished with a sharp click. Elena handed her the documents. Vanessa scanned them briefly, then signed with a slow flourish. "Process the funds to my personal account," she said, "and record this withdrawal as a procedural audit entry." Elena nodded. "Done." Paul stepped forward hesitantly. "Miss Clark, please, may I at least apologize properly?" Vanessa turned toward him again, but now her tone carried the weight of an entire lineage. "I have been apologized to my entire life. Every time it sounds the same, sorry, I did not know. Sorry, I did not mean it. Sorry, I was following rules. What matters is that you did it, not why." Her eyes flicked to the camera still rolling in the woman's hand. "Leave it running," she said quietly. "People should see that calm is not weakness." Paul's breath hitched. The facade of a seasoned manager had vanished. He looked like a man facing his own reflection for the first time. Vanessa walked to the center of the lobby, turning slowly to face the gathered crowd. "When I was 23, she began, "I opened my first business account. The banker told me the system was down. I waited 3 hours while they served 10 other people. That day, I promised myself something. One day, I would own the building they worked in." Oh. A hush fell over the room. Only the faint hum of air conditioning filled the gap between words. "And today," she continued, "I did not come here to boast about it. I came to see if the lesson had been learned. It has not." Her words fell like steady rain, soft, relentless, cleansing. Paul stepped back, whispering, "What happens now?" Vanessa looked him straight in the eye. Now you learn how it feels to be judged by appearance. You will sit through the same bias training you once ignored. You will write to every client you dismissed, and you will apologize in full. Not because corporate requires it, but because I do. He nodded weakly, knowing there was no escape. She turned toward the others, Elena, the guard, the onlookers. And as for the rest of you, she said, remember this morning. Remember what happened when silence stayed, seated, and conscience stood up. A few customers began to clap softly, unsure if it was appropriate. The sound grew, quiet but certain. It was not applause for spectacle, it was recognition. Vanessa took the withdrawal slip, folded it once, and placed it in her bag. This money was never the point, she said. Dignity was. Then she turned toward the door, her reflection trailing across the marble floor like a closing statement. The sunlight waiting outside looked sharper now, almost deliberate, as if the day itself wanted to witness what justice looked like when it finally walked out of the bank it owned. Outside, the morning heat wrapped the glass walls in a soft haze. The city moved on, unaware that inside Heritage Trust Bank, a quiet revolution had just unfolded. But Vanessa Clark did not rush toward her car. She stood on the steps for a moment, breathing in the weight of what had happened. Behind her, the marble lobby remained still, suspended between shame and awakening. She turned slightly, catching her reflection in the glass doors. It was not pride she saw, it was steadiness, the kind that comes from years of being doubted and never breaking. A small group of customers had followed her outside. They lingered near the entrance, whispering, recording, processing. One young man in a blue hoodie, barely 25, stepped forward hesitantly. "Ma'am," he said, "I saw everything. I just want to say thank you. People like me, we deal with this every day. They look at us like we are problems before we even speak." Vanessa looked at him fully. "You are not a problem," she said. "You are a mirror. You make them confront what they deny." He nodded, eyes wet with emotion. "Still, it takes courage to do what you did in there." Vanessa's gaze softened. Courage is not the hard part. Endurance is. From behind them, the heavy glass doors opened again. Elena Morales stepped out, clutching a file folder. She looked nervous but determined. "Miss Clark?" she called out. Vanessa turned. "Yes, Elena." Elena glanced back toward the lobby before speaking. "Corporate already called. They are auditing every complaint Paul ever dismissed. I also wanted to give you this." She handed over a printed document, a staff roster, annotated in red ink. These are the employees he blacklisted for questioning his decisions. Most of them were women or people of color. Vanessa took the paper slowly, scanning the names. She recognized several from prior reports. "Thank you for your honesty," she said. "That list will not be forgotten." Elena hesitated. "I was afraid to speak up before. I thought I would lose my job." Vanessa's tone was gentle but unyielding. "Fear is how injustice keeps its keys. The moment you speak, it loses the lock." A gust of wind carried the faint hum of traffic. Across the street, people were gathering, drawn by whispers spreading online. The video from inside had already escaped the walls of Heritage Trust. Dozens of phones were out, flashes of light capturing Vanessa as if she were walking from a movie scene into real life. She ignored them. Her assistant's voice came through the Bluetooth earpiece in her hand. "Carla here. You are trending on every platform. Clip from inside has over 300,000 views and climbing." Vanessa exhaled slowly. "And the official statement?" "Draft ready," Carla said. "Do you want to approve now?" "Not yet," Vanessa replied. "Let the silence speak first." She descended the steps, her heels striking the stone in rhythm with her heartbeat. Every sound carried a strange new authority earned, not performed. When she reached the sidewalk, a man in a tailored beige suit intercepted her path. He was middle-aged, white, the kind of polished confidence that usually filled corner offices. "Miss Clark?" he asked. She studied him briefly. "Yes? I am Richard Hayes, Regional Director for Heritage Trust. I came as soon as I heard. I owe you a personal apology and my gratitude for exposing what was happening under my watch." Vanessa regarded him carefully. "Under your watch," she repeated. "Then you already know accountability starts with you." He swallowed. "I do. I have initiated an emergency review across all branches. I will cooperate fully with Summit Holdings' Ethics Division." Vanessa's expression remained unreadable. "Good. Because this is not just about one man's behavior. It is about the culture that let him believe he could humiliate anyone and still keep his job. Hayes nodded quickly, sweat forming near his temple. We will fix this. Vanessa's tone cooled. You will not fix this for me. You will fix it for the next person who walks through those doors and does not have my title. He looked down, chastened. Understood. The young man in the blue hoodie lingered nearby, watching. When Hayes walked back into the building, he spoke again, almost to himself. They never listen until someone powerful shows up. Vanessa heard him and turned. Then maybe it is time we redefine what powerful looks like. He smiled faintly. You already did. For a moment, the city noise filled the space between them, the honk of distant traffic, the low hum of conversation, the buzz of phones recording history in real time. Vanessa turned toward her car, a sleek black sedan waiting at the curb. Her driver stepped out, holding the door, but she raised a hand. One moment. She looked back at the glass building behind her. Through the tinted doors, she could still see Paul inside, seated at a desk, flanked by 2 compliance officers. He looked small now, not just in posture but in purpose. The same space where he had once ruled with arrogance now confined him in accountability. Vanessa spoke softly, almost to herself. It never starts with hatred. It starts with assumption. Carla's voice echoed through her earpiece again. The media wants a statement, Vanessa. They are waiting outside your office. She nodded once. Tell them I will speak soon. But not about what happened today, about why it keeps happening. Yes, ma'am. Vanessa stepped into the car, the door closing with a soft click. As the driver pulled away, she looked out the window one last time. The letters on the bank's glass facade shimmered in the sunlight. Heritage Trust Bank. She whispered under her breath, Trust is earned, not inherited. The car merged into traffic, leaving behind a lobby forever changed. Inside, some employees were crying, others silent, all realizing that fairness was no longer optional. And outside, on every phone screen lighting up across the country, people were seeing the same truth. Justice did not always arrive with sirens or headlines. Sometimes it wore a red blazer and spoke softly enough to make the world finally listen. By the time Vanessa Clark's car reached the corporate tower of Summit Holdings, the news had already spread through every corner of the city. Screens in cafes replayed the moment. Paul Stanton tore the withdrawal slip in half, followed by Vanessa's calm reveal of ownership. Headlines scrolled across digital billboards downtown. Black CEO confronts racism inside her own bank. The story had already escaped the walls of Heritage Trust. It had become a mirror for an entire country. Inside the moving car, Vanessa sat still, her hands folded in her lap. The city blurred outside her window, skyscrapers flashing like memories. Her assistant's voice filled the quiet through the car speaker. Corporate Communications is requesting final approval for your statement, ma'am, Carla said. Vanessa's eyes stayed fixed on the skyline. Read it to me, Carla began. Summit Holdings recognizes the recent incident at Heritage Trust Bank as a failure of leadership, not policy. Effective immediately, all regional management has been placed under review. The company remains committed to ensuring that dignity is never conditional. Vanessa closed her eyes. Strike that last line. Carla hesitated. Which part, ma'am? The phrase, remains committed. Commitment is not the same as change. Replace it with, the company will act, not apologize. Yes, ma'am, Carla replied, typing audibly. The car turned onto Summit Avenue, where a line of reporters and camera crews had already gathered outside the glass headquarters. Security staff stood ready to escort her inside, but Vanessa shook her head. No back entrances, she said. If I ask for transparency, I will walk through the front door. When the car stopped, the crowd erupted in a storm of questions. Microphones and lenses angled toward her as she stepped out, her red blazer vivid against the concrete and chrome. A journalist shouted above the noise. Miss Clark, did the bank manager know who you were? Vanessa met the question with calm precision. He knew what I looked like. That was enough for him to decide what I was worth. Another voice followed quickly. Do you plan to press charges? I plan to change the system that makes charges necessary, she said. The security team parted the crowd as she entered the lobby. Inside, the sound shifted from chaos to quiet professionalism. Her executive team was waiting near the elevator, diverse faces, alert, anxious. The youngest among them, a data analyst named Jordan Fields, approached nervously. Ma'am, The board has scheduled an emergency meeting for noon. Every department head will be there. Vanessa nodded. Good. Make sure compliance has all the footage ready. No edits. I want them to see every second, especially the parts that hurt. As the elevator doors closed, Jordan glanced sideways. Ma'am, was it hard staying calm like that? Vanessa turned her head slowly. Anger is easy. Discipline takes practice. The elevator chimed open on the top floor. Her office stretched wide across glass and steel, overlooking the river. On her desk, 3 phones were ringing. Carla stood beside the panoramic window, tablet in hand. Media outlets want live interviews, she said. CNN, Forbes, and the Financial Herald. They all want your side. Vanessa walked to the window. They already have it. The footage speaks better than I could. Carla hesitated. People are calling you a hero. Vanessa turned. Heroes do not fix systems. They distract from them. Carla fell silent, unsure how to respond. Vanessa crossed to the large display wall, where security footage from multiple branches flickered in quiet motion. Each screen showed employees at their counters, serving clients, conducting business as usual. But beneath the calm surface, she saw the pattern she had fought all her life, the cautious glances, the selective smiles, the hierarchy of skin tones hiding under corporate lighting. Her fingers touched the glass, expanding the image of the Heritage Trust lobby. Paul Stanton appeared frozen mid-sentence, his mouth open, arrogance caught forever in pixels. Pause, Vanessa said. The system obeyed. Zoom in on Elena Morales. The screen tightened around the young teller's face, eyes wide but resolute, the moment she had stood up and said, No, sir, you are out of line. Vanessa smiled faintly. Courage always starts quiet. Carla watched her carefully. What do you want to do next? Vanessa turned from the screen. Rebuild from the inside. Start with leadership. At exactly noon, the boardroom filled. 12 directors sat around a long oak table, murmuring as Vanessa entered. The chatter stopped when she spoke. Gentlemen and ladies, she began, what happened this morning was not an anomaly. It was a reflection of us. One director, an older man named Harold Bryant, cleared his throat. With all due respect, Vanessa, one employee's poor behavior should not define an entire company. Vanessa placed her hands on the table. One employee represents every blind spot we ignored. If one man felt empowered to humiliate a client because of race, it means our culture permitted it. Another board member, a woman in a navy suit, nodded slowly. The footage is brutal, she said. Public trust will take months to recover. Vanessa's eyes swept the room. Then we will not recover it with press releases. We will earn it with restructuring. Effective today, every regional manager will undergo bias recertification. All staff will complete anti-discrimination modules, monitored by third-party auditors. Harold frowned. That will cost millions. Vanessa's reply was immediate. Prejudice already costs billions. We just hide it better. Silence filled the boardroom. No one argued. She continued, her tone calm but absolute. The Heritage Trust brand once stood for exclusivity. It will now stand for equality, and if anyone here finds that difficult, resign now. No one moved. After a moment, Vanessa turned toward the window, the city glinting beyond the glass. We talk about financial capital, she said quietly, but moral capital is what decides whether we survive the next decade. Without it, we are just another institution waiting to fall. The board members exchanged uneasy looks. Some lowered their eyes, others nodded. Vanessa gathered her documents, preparing to leave. The public will forget the headlines, she said. But the people who saw what happened this morning will remember how we responded. Let them remember that we chose dignity. As she walked out of the boardroom, the hush that followed was not fear, it was respect. The kind earned only when truth leaves no room for argument. Outside, rain began to fall lightly against the windows. It was as if the sky itself had decided to wash something clean. The rain came down in long, even sheets, tracing silver paths along the glass facade of the Summit Holdings Tower. Inside, the sound of it filled the hallways with a steady rhythm, soft but insistent, as if the city itself were applauding what had finally been said aloud. Vanessa Clark stood by the window of her private office, hands resting lightly on the polished edge of the desk. Below her, the streets shimmered under the storm umbrellas, opening like small acts of faith. She had spent the past hour answering calls from lawyers, journalists, and civil rights organizations, each one wanting a statement, a partnership, a quote. But what she wanted, above all, was quiet. The intercom light blinked once. Carla's voice came through, careful and measured. "Ma'am, there is someone here to see you. He does not have an appointment, but he says it is important." Vanessa exhaled. "Who is it?" "He says his name is Ryan Cooper." The name made her pause. "The young security guard from the Heritage Trust branch." "Send him in," she said. Moments later, the office door opened. Ryan stepped in, hat in hand, his uniform slightly damp from the rain. He looked uncertain, standing at the threshold of a space that seemed built to intimidate. The office stretched wide and sleek, filled with quiet power, tall shelves of contracts, dark wood, the faint hum of technology. Vanessa gestured toward the chair opposite her desk. "Sit down, Officer Cooper." He did, carefully. "Ma'am, I will not take much of your time. I came because I needed to say thank you. What you did in that lobby, it changed something in me." Vanessa tilted her head. "Changed what?" Ryan looked down, twisting his cap between his hands. "I have seen people treated badly before. I told myself it was not my place to interfere, that I had to follow orders. But when I heard that man talk to you like that, something broke. I froze. I should have said something sooner." Her voice stayed gentle. "You said enough when you stopped following his orders." He shook his head. "Still, I want to do better. If you ever need someone in security who will not look the other way, I am your man." Vanessa studied him. He was young, but there was sincerity in his posture, humility in his tone. "Tell me something, Ryan. Why do you think so many people stay silent when they witness injustice?" He hesitated. "Because they think silence keeps them safe." And does it?" He looked up at her. "No, ma'am. It just delays the cost." Vanessa nodded slowly. "You are learning faster than most executives I have met." Ryan managed a small smile. "Thank you, ma'am. I will not forget that." A knock interrupted them. Carla stepped in, holding a slim folder. "Vanessa, we have the official internal report from compliance. You might want to see this." Vanessa opened it carefully. The report was crisp, clinical, every detail recorded with precision. Timestamps, witness statements, screenshots of employee chat logs. But one line stood out: Elena Morales' statement, handwritten and raw. She stood there like she had nothing to prove, and that is what made them lose control. Vanessa's throat tightened slightly. "Keep this record secure," she said. "No leaks. The story belongs to the people who lived it, not the media who will twist it." Carla nodded. "Understood. Also, your meeting with the Equal Access Coalition has been confirmed for 3 o'clock. They want you to address their annual summit next week." Vanessa glanced up. "Topic?" "They suggested leadership after bias." Vanessa gave a faint, knowing smile. Irony has a sense of humor. Ryan stood, realizing his time was up. "I will leave you to your work, ma'am. Thank you again." Before he reached the door, Vanessa said quietly, "Ryan, when you put your uniform on tomorrow, remember you are not just protecting property, you are protecting dignity, the kind that does not always shout but always deserves to be heard." He nodded, eyes bright. "Yes, ma'am." Then he left, closing the door softly behind him. For a moment, Vanessa was alone again with the rain. She walked back to the window. The storm blurred the skyline, washing color from glass and steel. In the reflection, she saw not herself but the girl. She used to be the 23-year-old entrepreneur denied her first loan because the banker did not believe in her business model. She could still remember that office. The smell of stale coffee, the indifferent smile, the quiet dismissal. The voice from that day still echoed in her mind. "Come back when you have real collateral, sweetheart." She had gone home that night and written the business plan for her first company, working until dawn, promising herself that no one would ever speak to her that way again. Now, decades later, standing at the height of everything she had built, she realized that vow had come full circle. She had not only defended her own dignity, she had held a mirror to the entire system that once belittled her. The office phone buzzed again. It was Carla. "Ma'am, the lobby is filling up. Employees are gathering. I think they want to see you." Vanessa turned from the window. "All of them?" "Nearly everyone," Carla said. "Even staff from other floors." Vanessa took one steady breath. "Then let us not make them wait." When she stepped into the elevator, Her reflection multiplied in the mirrored walls 1,000 versions of herself, each one carrying the same calm defiance. The ride down felt endless, like descending through layers of memory. When the doors opened, the entire lobby fell silent. Hundreds of employees stood in a wide semicircle, watching her approach. Some clutched phones, some held umbrellas dripping rainwater onto the marble, but none spoke. At the center, Elena Morales stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. "Miss Clark, thank you for standing up. We just wanted you to know that we are with you." Vanessa looked around the room, meeting every pair of eyes she could. "Then remember this moment," she said softly. "Because standing with someone is not just for the cameras. It is for every quiet injustice no one films." Outside, the rain began to ease. A single beam of sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling across the floor like a benediction. And for the first time that day, Vanessa allowed herself to smile not for victory, but for clarity. The kind that comes only when truth, at last, finds its own reflection. The following morning began not with noise, but with an unusual quiet inside Summit Holdings. The sky above the city was still gray from last night's rain, but light seeped through the clouds, soft and deliberate. In the executive tower, employees moved differently, no small talk, no laughter, just a charged hush that followed Vanessa Clark wherever she went. By 7:30, the conference hall on the 20th floor was filled. Rows of staff members sat shoulder to shoulder, some from Heritage Trust branches, others flown in overnight from regional offices. Every monitor in the room displayed the same title in white letters against a black background: Accountability Forum, Leadership and Bias Review. Vanessa entered without an entourage. She carried no notes, no speech. Just the same calm that had shattered arrogance less than 24 hours ago. The moment she stepped onto the stage, the murmurs stopped. "Good morning," she began. Her voice was low, steady, filling the air like slow thunder. "What happened yesterday is not just a story that went viral. It is a mirror, and every person in this company is reflected in it, whether you like it or not." A ripple of unease ran through the audience. Some shifted in their seats. Vanessa continued. "I am not here to shame anyone. Shame is temporary. Awareness lasts longer. So, today, we are not going to talk about what went wrong. We are going to see it." She gestured toward the screen behind her. The lights dimmed, and the footage began to play the video from the Heritage Trust lobby. Uncut, unedited, uncomfortably real. The room watched in absolute silence as Paul Stanton tore the withdrawal slip in half, his voice echoing through the speakers. The words, "people like you," landed like fresh wounds even now. Gasps came from a few seats. Some employees lowered their heads. Others stared frozen, as though seeing themselves in that frame. When the clip ended, Vanessa stood still for a moment, letting the silence stretch until it became unbearable. "That," she said finally, "is what unchecked bias looks like. Not when it is shouted, when it is routine, when it feels like policy." Her eyes scanned the room. Every corporation loves to post statements about diversity and equality, but paper does not make people fair, behavior does. This company will not survive on slogans. It will survive on accountability. At the front row, a senior branch director named Linda Freeman raised her hand hesitantly. "Miss Clark," she said, "I agree with everything you are saying. But some of our older managers, well, they are from a different generation. They might not even realize how their words sound." Vanessa turned toward her, calm but unflinching. "Then it is time they learn to hear themselves, because ignorance stops being an excuse once it starts causing harm." A few quiet nods spread through the audience. Linda lowered her gaze. From the corner of the room, Elena Morales stood up. She had never spoken in a meeting this large before. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice did not. "May I say something?" Vanessa nodded. "Please." Elena looked around the room, meeting the eyes of her colleagues. "When I stood up in that lobby yesterday, I was terrified. I thought I was about to lose my job. But what scared me more was staying silent and knowing I would have to live with it. I realized that silence does not protect anyone, it only protects the wrong person." Applause broke out, first from a few, then from everyone. It was not loud or triumphant, it was the sound of awakening. Vanessa waited until it faded. "Thank you, Elena. What you did took courage, and courage is contagious. Every institution needs a moment when someone refuses to look away. You gave us that moment." She stepped closer to the front of the stage. "From today forward, Summit Holdings will launch a new program called the Mirror Initiative. It will document internal incidents of bias, review them publicly, and train leadership to address them not in memos, but in person. Every employee will know that dignity is company property. Carla, standing near the door, watched with quiet pride. The words company property echoed through the hall, an inversion of every policy that had once dehumanized people as resources. In the back row, a man in his 50s cleared his throat. "Miss Clark, if I may, what about Paul Stanton?" Vanessa paused. The name drew a faint tension into the room. "Paul Stanton is no longer employed with us," she said. "But I have instructed Human Resources not to blacklist him. He will have to attend the same training program he ignored, this time as a student, not a supervisor." The man frowned. "Forgive me, but why give him another chance?" Vanessa's reply came softly but firmly. "Because justice without restoration is just revenge. We do not need more broken people. We need educated ones." That line hung in the air, sinking into the walls. After the meeting ended, staff members lingered, forming small circles of quiet conversation. Vanessa stayed behind, walking among them. People stopped her to thank her, to shake her hand, to share stories they had buried for years. A middle-aged teller from Atlanta said, "I once lost a promotion because they said my accent made customers uncomfortable." Vanessa met her gaze. "Then speak in that accent every time you teach someone what leadership sounds like." When the crowd finally thinned, Carla approached her. "You know this will change everything," she said. Vanessa smiled faintly. "That is the point. Change that does not cost you anything is not real change." They stepped outside the conference hall together. The rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean. Sunlight poured through the glass roof, painting the floor in gold. Employees passed by with renewed purpose, some smiling, some still thoughtful, but all walking a little taller than before. Vanessa looked out at them, her reflection stretching across the polished floor. "Yesterday," she said quietly, "I showed them what prejudice looks like. Today, I want to show them what redemption can look like too." Carla turned to her. "And tomorrow?" Vanessa's eyes lifted toward the city skyline, where the clouds had finally broken apart. "Tomorrow," she said, "we start building something worth inheriting." The air around them felt lighter, almost new. Outside, the glass doors of Summit Holdings reflected a different kind of trust, one built not on wealth, but on the simple, stubborn belief that respect, once given freely, could change the architecture of an entire world. By the afternoon, the story had become more than a headline, it had become a movement. Across the country, television anchors replayed the footage of Vanessa Clark standing in that marble lobby, her composure undisturbed as a man tore through her withdrawal slip. On social media, her calm defiance was being called the red silence, a phrase that spread like wildfire, hashtags multiplied by the minute. But inside Summit Holdings, away from the noise, Vanessa was not reading comments or watching news feeds. She was sitting in a modest glass-walled meeting room with three people she trusted, most Carla, her assistant, Malik Johnson, the company's head of community relations, and Dr. Nadine Harper, an outside consultant in social ethics. The table between them was covered in printed transcripts, compliance reports, and a few photographs from Heritage Trust branches across the country. Vanessa began quietly. "I want truth, not damage control. How deep does this go?" Malik leaned forward, tapping the stack of reports. "We have verified at least 14 incidents in the last 18 months, involving similar language or behavior customers questioned, transactions delayed, profiles flagged for unusual activity, and most of those customers share one thing in common. Color," Vanessa said flatly. He nodded. "Yes, it is not official policy, but it is systemic culture. It starts in tone, ends in treatment." Dr. Harper adjusted her glasses. "The real problem, Miss Clark, is that bias is taught indirectly. No one says it aloud, but it is absorbed. Every time a junior employee sees a senior one dismiss a client without consequence, that lesson is reinforced." Vanessa exhaled slowly, her fingers tracing the rim of a coffee cup. "Then we are not just fighting prejudice, we are fighting inheritance." Carla handed her another file. "This one is from Chicago. A young entrepreneur tried to open a business account. Same story. They said his documentation looked fraudulent. He withdrew his application the next day." Vanessa's voice dropped. "What was his name?" "Marcus Reed." Vanessa looked up sharply. Marcus Reed from Southside. He pitched his startup to our foundation last year. He had a clean business model and a perfect record. Yes, Carla said. Same person. The silence that followed was heavy. Vanessa closed the folder, her expression unreadable. Get him on the phone, she said. Carla hesitated. Now? Now. Within minutes, the phone on the table buzzed, and Carla put it on speaker. A young man's voice came through, cautious but polite. This is Marcus. Huh. Marcus, Vanessa said evenly. This is Vanessa Clark. There was a pause, then an audible intake of breath. Miss Clark, I saw the video. Everyone has. You are... Let us skip the part where you thank me, Vanessa interrupted gently. I heard you tried to open an account at one of our branches and were denied. Marcus's tone tightened. That is true. They said the business license looked fake. They even called security when I asked to speak to a manager. And what did you do? She asked. I left, he said after a long pause. I figured fighting would make it worse. I found another bank, smaller one, but it still hurts, you know. I was just trying to build something honest. Vanessa nodded, though he could not see her. I understand. You should know that things are changing. I would like you to come to the corporate office tomorrow morning. Bring your business plan. Marcus hesitated. You are serious? Completely, she said. You were denied access to opportunity once. I intend to correct that. His voice cracked slightly. Thank you, ma'am. I do not know what to say. Say nothing yet, Vanessa replied. Just be on time. When the call ended, Malik leaned back, smiling faintly. That is going to make a headline. Vanessa shook her head. I am not interested in headlines. I am interested in proof that this company can do the opposite of what it has done for decades. Dr. Harper spoke softly. Symbolism matters, Miss Clark. What you are doing will resonate far beyond this building. Vanessa looked at her. Symbolism without substance is decoration. We will do both. She stood, walking to the window. The skyline reflected against the glass-sharp lines of progress built on old inequities. Her own reflection looked back at her like a challenge. I want every branch manager on a call tonight, she said. Mandatory attendance, no excuses. Carla blinked. Tonight? Yes. At 7 o'clock. We are not waiting until Monday to begin reform. The world will not wait, and neither will we. 7 o'clock came. The virtual conference grid filled with dozens of faces, some tense, some defensive, all silent. Vanessa appeared on screen, framed by the dark wood of her office. I know many of you are tired of hearing about what happened yesterday, she began. But tired is not the same as accountable. Every one of you leads people who follow your example. So tonight, we are going to talk about what leadership looks like when the world is watching and when it is not. A voice spoke from the lower grid, hesitant but firm. Miss Clark, some of us feel we are being judged for one man's mistake. Vanessa leaned forward slightly. One man exposed a pattern. You can choose to be offended by that, or you can choose to fix it. Which side of history do you prefer? No one answered. She continued. Starting tomorrow, every branch will begin open. Client hours, no appointments, no pre-screening, no assumptions. People walk in, they get treated as equals. No exceptions. Another manager spoke. That will slow down operations. Vanessa smiled faintly. So will discrimination lawsuits. Consider it balance. A few cameras flickered as participants shifted uncomfortably. She let the silence stretch, then said, You all saw the video. You all saw what power looks like when it stays silent. Now I need you to see what it looks like when it stands up. Her tone dropped lower, quieter. Because this company's name is Heritage Trust. Heritage means history. Trust means belief. Let us make sure neither of those words becomes a lie. The call ended. The screens went dark. Vanessa sat back in her chair, the city lights flickering against the glass behind her. For the first time that day, she allowed herself a long breath. The war she had chosen was not loud, but it was endless. Yet she knew one thing with absolute certainty: change had already begun, and this time it was irreversible. Night settled over the city like velvet, soft but full of electricity. The glow of office lights stretched high into the clouds above Summit Holdings Tower, each window a fragment of work still being done long after business hours. Vanessa Clark had not left her office. She sat at the large wooden desk, a single lamp illuminating the open reports before her. Outside the glass, rain had returned, tracing restless streaks down the windows as if the sky itself could not sleep. The video call with branch managers had ended an hour ago, but its echoes remained. Vanessa could still see their faces defensive, uncertain, afraid of what reform might expose. She knew the fight ahead would not be about policies. It would be about habits. And habits, especially those built on privilege, do not vanish with apologies. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in," she said. Carla stepped in, carrying a tray with tea and a manila envelope. "You have not eaten all day," she said gently. Vanessa smiled faintly. "I will eat when the world calms down." Carla set the tray down. "Then you might starve." She handed over the envelope. "These are the latest updates from compliance. And there is something else. Someone sent you a letter." "A letter?" Vanessa repeated. "As in paper?" "Yes," Carla said. "Handwritten. No return address." Vanessa took it, unfolding the thick cream-colored page. The handwriting was careful, old-fashioned. She read silently. "Miss Clark, I watched what happened to you, and I saw my own silence reflected in it. I worked at Heritage Trust for 22 years. I am not proud of what I allowed to happen in those halls. If this new program you announced truly stands for change, I would like to help rebuild what I helped break." A former manager. Vanessa read the note twice, then set it down. He did not sign it. "No," Carla said, "but the postmark is from Richmond, Virginia, one of the oldest branches." Vanessa nodded slowly. "Keep it. Anonymous truth is still truth." Carla hesitated before speaking again. "There is another matter. The press wants to know if you will attend the Equality Summit tomorrow. They say your appearance could redefine the entire conversation about race and corporate ethics." Vanessa looked at her tea, untouched. "Every time I speak publicly, someone says it could redefine something. I am tired of redefining. I just want people to behave decently without needing definitions." Carla gave a small smile. "That might take a while." "I have time," Vanessa said softly. The office fell quiet again. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline, distant but deliberate. It reminded her of that day long ago, her first rejection, her first humiliation in a bank that did not believe she belonged. She could still see the teller's face, polite and cold. "I am sorry, Miss Clark," he had said back then. "The system cannot process a deposit that large without additional verification. You understand." She had understood too well. What he meant was that people like her were always too much for the system. Her thoughts broke when Carla's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. "It is Marcus Reed. He is downstairs. He said you told him to come by." Vanessa stood immediately. "Send him up." Moments later, the elevator doors opened, and Marcus entered the office. He was young, confident in posture but uncertain in expression, clutching a binder to his chest. His shoes left faint prints on the marble floor from the rain outside. "Good evening, Miss Clark," he said. "Thank you for seeing me." "Good evening, Marcus. Sit down," she replied. He sat, opening the binder with trembling hands. "This is my business plan. My company is called Urban Stream. It is a logistics firm designed to help small local shops deliver goods faster. I tried to present this last year, but the application was rejected without review." Vanessa flipped through the pages. His model was lean, clear, and forward-thinking, exactly the kind of innovation Summit Holdings had once ignored. "And how much are you requesting for initial funding?" $200,000, he said quietly. Vanessa closed the binder. "Approved." He blinked. "Just like that?" "Yes, but with one condition." "What is it?" "You will use part of your success to mentor at least 3 others who have been denied opportunity for the same reasons you were. Each one will do the same for 3 more. You will build something that multiplies justice, not just profit." Marcus's throat tightened. "I will. I promise." Vanessa leaned back. "Do not promise me. Promise yourself." He nodded, emotion rising. "Thank you, Miss Clark. I mean it." She smiled, the faintest curve of her lips. "You are welcome, Mr. Reed. And one more thing, call me Vanessa. Titles are useful until they become barriers." When Marcus left, Carla re-entered quietly. "That was generous." Vanessa shook her head. "That was overdue." Carla paused at the door. "It feels like something is shifting, does it not?" "Yes," Vanessa said. "But shifts are fragile. People love progress until it costs them comfort." She rose from her chair, walking toward the window. The storm outside was subsiding, the rain slowing to a whisper. Lights shimmered on the wet streets below, gold, red, and blue, blending into reflections that looked almost like fire. Vanessa spoke softly, more to herself than to Carla. They called me a fraud for asking to withdraw money from my own account. But what they really meant was that my existence disrupted their illusion of order. They saw wealth where they expected apology. They saw confidence where they wanted permission. That is what frightened them. Carla watched her quietly. And now? Now, Vanessa said, turning back, they will have to live in a world where women like me do not ask permission anymore. Lightning flashed once across the horizon, illuminating her silhouette against the vast pane of glass. It was not fury in her posture, it was conviction, steady and deliberate, the kind that no storm could wash away. Down on the street, the city kept moving. But for those who had seen her story, something invisible had shifted. People were walking a little taller. Some were questioning rules they once accepted without thought. And somewhere in a quiet branch in Richmond, a former manager stared at the same video, holding a pen above a resignation letter that read, "To rebuild, one must first admit the ruins." Vanessa Clark's revolution had begun not with noise, but with stillness, the kind that changes everything without having to shout at all. Morning light seeped through the wide windows of Vanessa Clark's penthouse, spilling across polished marble and quiet order. The city below was already awake, its sounds softened by the height. Vanessa stood barefoot beside the window, a mug of coffee cooling in her hand. For the first time in days, there was no meeting waiting, no journalist at her door, no breaking news alert with her name attached. Only silence, the kind that felt earned. She watched the river cut through the skyline like a silver scar. From this height, everything looked peaceful, but she knew better. Peace was rarely real. It was just the pause between battles. Her phone buzzed on the counter. The name on the screen made her pause. Thomas Grayson, chairman of Summit Holdings, the man who had once been her mentor and the one who now had to face what she had exposed. She answered. "Good morning, Vanessa," his deep voice rumbled. "Good morning, Thomas. I wanted to thank you for what you did," he said. "You handled that crisis with grace. The board is impressed." Vanessa's tone stayed even. "Crisis management is not what I did, Thomas. I told the truth. There is a difference." A pause. "Yes," he admitted. "But truth has consequences. Some investors are nervous. The Heritage Trust incident has sparked regulatory inquiries. They are asking if bias might exist in our other subsidiaries." Vanessa sipped her coffee. "Then they should look. That is what audits are for." "Be careful," he warned softly. "This could spiral into something bigger than you intended." Vanessa looked out at the skyline, her reflection superimposed over the city's glass towers. "Bigger than I intended," she repeated. "That is the point, Thomas. This is not about me." Another silence. Then Thomas sighed. "I remember when you first walked into my office 10 years ago. No blazer, no boardroom polish, just confidence. You told me you wanted to own the system that once rejected you. You have done it, Vanessa. But ownership is not the same as immunity." "I never wanted immunity," she said quietly. "I wanted integrity." He chuckled sadly. "Integrity does not pay dividends. Then maybe it is time we invest in something else." Before he could answer, she ended the call. Vanessa set the phone down and walked toward the living room. On the glass table lay a folder, The Mirror Initiative, Week 1 Progress Report. She opened it. Photos and notes filled the pages, employees in training sessions, handwritten reflections, quotes from staff who had experienced bias firsthand. One line caught her attention. "For the first time, I feel seen at work." Vanessa closed the folder gently. The words were small, but their weight was immense. Her doorbell rang. It was early for visitors. She crossed the room and opened the door to find a woman standing there, gray-haired, tall, wearing a navy coat that had seen better days. She held a small envelope in her hand. "Miss Clark?" the woman said. "My name is Grace Stanton." Vanessa froze for a moment. The name hit like a soft echo. "Stanton," she repeated. "As in Paul Stanton?" Grace nodded. "Yes, I am his mother." Vanessa studied her quietly. The woman's eyes were tired, lined not just with age, but with something heavier, guilt, perhaps. Grace continued. "I know I have no right to be here. But my son, he has not spoken since that day. He lost his job, his confidence, his sense of self. I am not here to defend him, but I needed to see the woman who finally stopped him." Vanessa gestured for her to come in. "Please, sit." Grace hesitated before stepping inside. She looked around the room, taking in the elegance without envy, only reflection. He was not raised to hate, she said softly. But somewhere along the way he learned to fear. Maybe fear and hate are not so different. Vanessa sat across from her. Fear is just ignorance with better manners. Grace smiled sadly. He has been reading your story, you know, watching the videos. He said he does not recognize the man in that lobby. Then maybe this is his chance to start over, Vanessa said. I hope so, Grace whispered. He is attending the training program you created. He says it is difficult. I think it should be. Vanessa leaned back. Change is supposed to be difficult. That is how we know it is real. Grace's eyes glistened. I came to tell you something else. Thank you. Not for humiliating my son, for showing him what accountability looks like. No one ever has. Vanessa's expression softened. People only change when something shakes them enough to see themselves differently. If he is trying, then I wish him well. Grace stood slowly. I should go. I did not want to take more of your morning. As Vanessa walked her to the door, Grace turned one last time. You know, he always said the worst part was not being fired. It was hearing your voice after he insulted you. He said it was the calmest thing he had ever heard and that it broke him. Vanessa smiled faintly. Then maybe silence can teach louder than shouting. After Grace left, Vanessa remained by the door for a long moment. She could feel the echoes of that lobby again, the tension, the disbelief, the quiet strength that had changed everything. Her phone buzzed once more. A new message from Carla. Marcus Reed just secured his first client. He wanted you to know. Vanessa allowed herself a full smile this time. Good, she whispered. She walked back to the window. The clouds were thinning now, revealing streaks of pale blue. The storm had passed, but the world still carried its scent fresh, electric, alive. For the first time in years, Vanessa felt something she had not felt since before her first rejection, before her first fight to be seen. It was not relief, it was readiness. The kind of readiness that comes when silence is no longer something to endure but something to wield. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware that within one penthouse above it, a new chapter of leadership was already being written, one where dignity was not a statement, but a standard. The following day dawned with a thin band of orange light stretched across the horizon, painting the edges of the city awake. Vanessa Clark arrived at the Summit Holdings headquarters earlier than usual. The air inside the tower felt different, now lighter, yet filled with quiet expectancy. Word had spread that she was personally overseeing the first live session of the Mirror Initiative, and hundreds of employees had logged in remotely from across the country. By 8 o'clock, the auditorium was full. The air buzzed with subdued anticipation mixed with nerves. This was not another corporate seminar or a motivational talk. This was accountability with a pulse. Vanessa stood backstage, her reflection staring back from the mirrored wall. The woman who looked back at her was poised, but not untouched. Her eyes carried fatigue, but also clarity, the kind that only comes when you have survived both humiliation and victory without letting either define you. Carla entered quietly, tablet in hand. The broadcast feed is ready, she said. All branches are connected. Vanessa nodded once. Good. She adjusted her blazer, took a slow breath, and walked toward the stage. When she stepped into the light, the audience rose instinctively, not for applause, but out of respect. She raised a hand slightly. Please sit. The room obeyed. The hum of cameras, the shuffle of notepads, the faint click of laptop keys all faded. Before we begin, Vanessa said, her voice low and steady, I want to make one thing clear. This is not a lecture. This is not punishment. This is reflection. Uncomfortable, necessary reflection. Oh. She tapped the small remote in her hand, and a photo appeared on the massive screen behind her. The Heritage Trust lobby, frozen in that moment before everything changed. The audience inhaled collectively, as if reliving it for the first time. This, she continued, is what it looks like when silence loses its excuse. Her gaze swept the room. Yesterday, someone asked me if forgiveness has a place in all this. My answer is yes, but not before understanding. Forgiveness without understanding is just erasure. In the front row sat several familiar faces, regional managers, compliance officers, junior tellers, even Ryan Cooper, the security guard whose hesitation had turned into courage. They watched her like students in the presence of gravity. Vanessa walked slowly across the stage. When people ask why I stayed calm that day, they assume it was strategy. It was not. It was exhaustion. You learn, after years of being doubted, that rage only entertains the comfortable. So I gave them silence, because silence makes the guilty hear themselves. A murmur of agreement moved through the audience. Vanessa continued, "But silence is not surrender. It is preparation. You wait, you observe, and when the right moment comes, you speak with proof instead of noise. That is how change survives the news cycle." Carla watched from the wings, recording every second. Even she, who had seen Vanessa in every mode, furious, focused, grieving, could feel something new in her voice. It was not defiance anymore. It was resolve turned into rhythm. Vanessa clicked to the next slide. This time, the image showed data, statistics of racial bias in financial services. The numbers spoke for themselves: higher rejection rates for minority business loans, longer approval delays, disproportionate fraud flags. "These numbers are not accidents," Vanessa said. "They are habits with spreadsheets." The line struck deep. People shifted in their seats. Some took notes, others simply stared. "Heritage Trust is not the only bank with this disease," she continued. "But it is ours, and when something belongs to you, you fix it. You do not hide it behind a press release. You face it, you name it, and you dismantle it piece by piece until it has no home left." Ryan Cooper raised his hand tentatively. "Miss Clark, may I say something?" Vanessa gestured for him to stand. He cleared his throat. "That day in the lobby, when Mr. Stanton ordered me to remove you, I almost did it. I thought following orders made me professional. Now I realize it just made me complicit. I am not proud of that, but I am learning, and I want to thank you for giving me the chance to learn, instead of just firing me." Vanessa's expression softened. "Growth always starts with admission, Ryan. Thank you for having the courage to name your moment." Applause spread through the room, not wild or theatrical, but genuine. She waited for the sound to fade. "That," she said, "is why this program exists. Not to destroy people, but to rebuild them differently. Because real justice is not vengeance, it is education." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "I have been asked whether what happened in that lobby could have gone differently. The truth is, yes. If one person, just one, had chosen courage over comfort, the story would have changed. But none of them did, so I had to." The auditorium was silent now, the kind of silence that listens. Vanessa looked around, her tone softening. "Each of you will face your own version of that moment someday. It might not happen in a bank. It might happen in a meeting, a hiring interview, or a casual remark you could ignore. And when it does, I hope you remember one thing. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the oppressed." A single light above her flickered slightly, casting a golden outline around her figure. "This is our institution," she said. "It can stand for something or it can stand for nothing. The choice is no longer theoretical, it is visible." She let the final sentence linger before stepping back from the podium. When the lights brightened again, the audience remained seated, many in tears, others in thought. No one rushed to leave. Carla moved forward and whispered, "Do you want me to close the session, ma'am?" Vanessa shook her head. "No. Let them sit with it a little longer. Change begins in discomfort." She exited quietly through the side door. Outside the auditorium, the hallway was bathed in soft sunlight. Through the glass panels, she could see the city beyond the same city that had once told her no. Now, it was listening. For the first time, Vanessa allowed herself to exhale fully. She did not need applause. She did not need validation. She had something far rarer impact, measured not in cheers, but in the silence of people realizing they could do better. And that, she knew, was how revolutions truly begin. The next morning unfolded under a thin veil of mist. The city's pulse was steady, but inside Summit Holdings, something had shifted permanently. The walls seemed to carry an awareness now, a quiet humility that had not been there before. Employees walked through the halls with new purpose, cautious, reflective, but awake. Vanessa Clark arrived at her office earlier than usual. Her red blazer hung on the back of her chair, replaced today by a soft gray one. Power did not need color to prove itself anymore. She placed her coffee on the table and opened her laptop. The subject line waiting at the top of her inbox read, "Heritage Trust Compliance Update. Urgent." She clicked it. A report filled the screen, outlining new findings from the ongoing audit. Words like irregularities, deferred applications, and discriminatory language appeared in cold, bureaucratic font. Her jaw tightened as she scrolled further. Over 50 unresolved complaints had been uncovered from branches across 3 states. Each case carried the same tone: suspicion, delay, denial. Carla entered just as Vanessa reached the final page. "It is worse than we thought," Vanessa said quietly. Carla nodded. "I saw it too. Compliance says the behavior was normalized, never documented as bias, just procedural caution." Vanessa closed the laptop with deliberate calm. Caution is the word people use when they want to sound righteous while doing nothing. She stood and walked to the large window overlooking the city. The skyline stretched like a promise and a warning both. "Set up a meeting with Thomas Grayson," she said. "Today." Carla blinked. "The chairman?" "Yes. Tell him this is not a request." By mid-morning, the boardroom was ready. Thomas arrived with his usual unhurried composure: gray suit, silver cufflinks, and a presence that filled the room without effort. He greeted Vanessa with a nod that carried both respect and caution. "Vanessa," he said smoothly, taking his seat. "You wanted to speak privately." She remained standing. "I have read the full audit. It is damning. Entire regions of this company are operating on unspoken prejudice disguised as due diligence." Thomas interlocked his fingers, patient but wary. "And what would you like me to do?" "Authorize the full release of this report to the public," Vanessa said. He looked at her as though she had spoken another language. "You cannot be serious. That would destroy investor confidence. The market reacts poorly to self-inflicted wounds." "This is not a wound," she said. "It is an infection. Covering it will only make it rot deeper." Thomas exhaled, leaning back. "You are an idealist, Vanessa. That is what I always admired about you. But you also run a corporation. A public confession of systemic bias would trigger lawsuits, federal scrutiny, and media chaos." She met his gaze. "Maybe chaos is overdue." He hesitated. "You cannot fix a system by burning it down." Vanessa's voice hardened. "I am not burning it down, Thomas. I am disinfecting it." The air between them thickened. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Thomas said quietly, "You have to think strategically. We can issue an internal memo, maybe a press release acknowledging the findings, without publishing the details." Vanessa's eyes flashed. "You mean sanitize the truth until it is unrecognizable?" He sighed. "Do not mistake survival for cowardice. If we fall, we help no one." Vanessa walked to the end of the table, her heels echoing on the polished floor. "I built this company to stand for something more than survival. If integrity costs us money, then let us pay the bill and move forward with clean hands." Thomas's face softened slightly. "You remind me of who I used to be." "Then remember longer," she said. A knock interrupted them. Carla stepped in, holding a tablet. "Miss Clark, I am sorry to intrude, but there is something you need to see." "Oh." She turned the screen toward Vanessa. A news alert glowed in red. "Anonymous insider leaks Heritage Trust audit summary." Thomas frowned. "How?" Carla scrolled. "It is all over the networks. They have the numbers, the cases, even the internal memos. The leak is authentic." Vanessa studied the screen, her mind steady even as the room tensed. "Do we know who leaked it?" "Not yet," Carla said. Thomas stood abruptly. "This is a disaster. We will be crucified in the media." Vanessa turned toward him. "No, Thomas. We will be seen." She took the tablet from Carla and scrolled through the article. The headline was harsh but accurate. "Racial bias in banking inside the walls of Heritage Trust." There were quotes from employees, some anonymous, some not speaking about subtle discrimination, coded policies, and years of silence. Carla spoke softly. "They are calling you the whistleblower, ma'am." Vanessa looked up. "Let them. I would rather be mistaken for truth than applauded for denial." Thomas rubbed his temple. "Our stock will fall. Investors will panic." Vanessa's tone stayed calm. "Then we will build it back with honesty. A company that survives the truth becomes untouchable." She turned to Carla. "Prepare a public statement. We will not deny the leak. We will confirm it." Thomas's eyes widened. "Confirm it?" "Yes," she said. "By the end of the day." Carla nodded slowly. "Understood." After they left the room, Thomas remained standing, staring out the window. "Do you have any idea what you are inviting?" he asked quietly. Vanessa paused at the door. "Yes," she said. "Accountability." When she was gone, the boardroom felt colder, emptier. By evening, the story dominated every major network. Reporters stood outside the bank's branches, reading aloud from leaked documents. Employees whispered in break rooms. The public was divided, some angry, some awed, but no one was indifferent. And at the center of it all was Vanessa Clark, standing on her balcony as night fell. The city's lights shimmered below her like scattered confessions. She whispered to herself, not as comfort but as declaration. The truth cannot ruin what it was meant to save. Behind her, her phone buzzed with messages, praise, threats, invitations, outrage. She ignored them all, because in that moment, as the wind lifted the edge of her gray blazer and the hum of the city rose like a heartbeat, Vanessa knew something irrevocable had happened. The company she had inherited was gone. The one she was building had just been born. Night blurred into morning with no clear dividing line. The city had not slept, and neither had Summit Holdings. The leaked report had detonated across every major network like a controlled explosion, precise, damning, impossible to ignore. Television anchors spoke her name with equal parts admiration and alarm. Financial analysts debated her judgment, but in the glass tower that bore her company's logo, Vanessa Clark was calm. She sat at the head of a long table in the press room, her posture unshaken despite the chaos outside. Carla stood nearby, headset on, coordinating the flood of media requests. Rows of journalists filled the space, microphones poised, cameras rolling, anticipation thick as fog. At exactly 9 o'clock, Vanessa began to speak. "Thank you for coming. I will make this brief." Her voice carried with clarity that cut through the rustle of equipment. Yes, the leaked report is authentic. Yes, the bias it documents is real. And yes, I allowed this truth to be seen, because the only thing worse than injustice is pretending not to see it. Flash bulbs exploded. Questions erupted. A reporter from the Financial Herald called out, "Miss Clark, do you understand the magnitude of what this means for your company? Summit Holdings stock has already dropped 17% overnight." Vanessa met his gaze. Stock prices can recover. Integrity cannot. Another voice from the back shouted, "Are you resigning?" "No," she said simply. "You do not abandon a house because it is on fire. You stay, and you rebuild." The room stilled. Every eye stayed on her. She continued, "I will not issue an apology for exposing bias. I will, however, issue a promise. Every person wronged by this institution will receive restitution, financial, personal, and public. The walls of Heritage Trust will not hide shame anymore. They will host reform." The journalist from World Business Weekly leaned forward. "You are risking your entire career. Why take this path?" Vanessa's reply came quiet but absolute. "Because silence made me rich once. It will not make me righteous." The room fell silent again. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate, as if aware they were recording something larger than corporate scandal. After the briefing, Vanessa walked out into the hallway. Carla followed, her face pale but glowing with pride. "You just turned damage control into leadership," she said. Vanessa gave a small nod. "The truth needed a voice. I just lent it mine." They moved toward the elevator, surrounded by staff whispering updates from social media. Number Vanessa Clark and number The Red Silence were trending in 42 countries. Celebrities were quoting her lines. Activists were sharing clips of her speech. Even government officials were issuing statements calling for systemic reform in the banking industry. But amidst the noise, one message stood out on Vanessa's phone, an email from Paul Stanton. The subject line read, "Thank you for not destroying me." She hesitated before opening it. Inside were only a few lines. "Miss Clark, I finished the first week of training. I do not expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I finally understand what you taught me. My silence hurt more people than my words ever did. I am trying to unlearn who I was." Vanessa read the message twice. Then she typed a short reply. "Keep unlearning, that is where redemption begins." When she hit send, she felt something inside her ease, not relief, not triumph, but quiet release. By noon, the company's headquarters had transformed into a command center. Monitors displayed live analytics of news coverage, internal communications, and public reactions. Malik Johnson, head of community relations, entered the room with a tablet. "Vanessa, you might want to see this," he said. He projected a live feed onto the wall. Across several Heritage Trust branches, long lines of customers were forming, but they were not withdrawing money. They were making deposits. Some held small business checks. Others came just to shake the hands of tellers who looked like them. "They are showing solidarity," Malik said, astonished. "They are investing again because they believe in you." Vanessa stared at the screen. "No," she said softly. "They believe in what we can become." Her voice grew thoughtful. "Do you know why systems of power resist truth? Because truth changes who gets to speak. Today, for the first time, the people who were silenced are writing the next chapter." Carla smiled faintly. "You just made every headline writer in the world jealous." Vanessa laughed quietly. "Let them compete with integrity for once." Her phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. She answered. "Vanessa Clark," a familiar voice responded. "Miss Clark, this is President Aiden Marshall. I wanted to congratulate you personally. What you have done will accelerate our new fairness legislation. You have my respect." Vanessa blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "Mr. President, I appreciate that, but my goal was not to inspire legislation, it was to inspire accountability." "You achieved both," he said. "If there is anything my office can do to support your reform, you will have it." "Thank you, sir," she replied. "Support the people who cannot stand in rooms like this. That will be enough." When the call ended, Vanessa turned toward the window. Outside, the rain had returned, but it was gentle now, the kind that cleans instead of destroys. Malik spoke behind her. "You just received a message from the Treasury Department. They want to meet next week to discuss partnership initiatives for ethical finance." Vanessa nodded slowly. "Good. Let them come. Maybe this time we can design systems that do not punish honesty." Carla exhaled. "It feels like everything is changing all at once." "It is," Vanessa said. "And that is exactly how revolutions happen. Not with explosions, but with revelation." She looked out at the skyline again, where sunlight began to break through the clouds. "The world is watching," she said softly. "Let us give them something worth seeing." Up. And somewhere far below, inside a Heritage Trust branch that had once been cold and suspicious, a young black girl walked to the counter holding her first paycheck. The teller smiled warmly and said, "Welcome. How can I help you today?" For the first time in a long time, that question sounded like what it was meant to be, an invitation, not a test. And far above it all, Vanessa Clark closed her eyes, hearing that single, ordinary sentence as proof that extraordinary change had begun to take root. The next day began under an uneasy calm, the kind that follows a storm powerful enough to rearrange everything it touched. Outside the Summit Holdings Tower, reporters still waited in the drizzle, hoping for a new headline. Inside, the building felt transformed, stripped of its old arrogance, humming instead with the low rhythm of work being rebuilt. Vanessa Clark arrived just after sunrise. She moved through the lobby unnoticed at first, blending with the early staff, but whispers followed her like wind. Some voices carried admiration, others caution. Every pair of eyes that met hers did so a little longer than before, with a mix of curiosity and respect. Upstairs, the executive floor was already alive. Carla met her with a tablet full of updates. "The leak has stabilized," she said quickly. "Public opinion is shifting in our favor. Clients are applauding transparency, though a few investors are still anxious." Vanessa nodded. "They should be. Anxiety keeps complacency from coming back." Carla hesitated, then added, "There is one more thing. The Attorney General's office wants a meeting today. They are launching an industry-wide review on bias in banking, and they are citing your actions as the catalyst." Vanessa took that in quietly. "Then we meet them. Change does not scare me. Stagnation does." By 10 o'clock, she was in a private conference room on the 15th floor. The meeting was virtual, the screen filled with serious faces, federal officials, financial regulators, journalists. At the center sat Deputy Attorney General Samuel Rhodes, a man known for precision and restraint. "Miss Clark," Rhodes began, "thank you for joining. Let me be direct. Your transparency has sparked national scrutiny. We are reviewing cases across multiple institutions. Some executives claim your company's revelations were reckless, that you exposed trade secrets and client data." Vanessa met his gaze through the lens. "Transparency is not reckless when secrecy protects wrongdoing. If my truth makes others nervous, that says more about their conduct than mine." A murmur ran through the other participants. Rhodes regarded her carefully. "Do you realize the precedent this sets? You are essentially rewriting corporate accountability from the top down." "That is the goal," Vanessa said evenly. "The cost of silence has always been paid by the powerless. I am simply redistributing the bill." For a moment, Rhodes said nothing. Then he smiled faintly. History will remember this week, Miss Clark. I hope it remembers you kindly. Vanessa's reply was quiet but firm. I do not need kindness from history. I need progress from the present. The call ended. The screen faded to black. Carla turned to her. You just talked to the Justice Department like it was a department meeting. Vanessa gave a small smile. Respect is mutual, or it is meaningless. Later that afternoon, Malik Johnson entered her office carrying a thick folder. You might want to see this, he said. Letters from employees, hundreds of them. He spread them across her desk envelopes, printed emails, handwritten notes. Vanessa read the first one. Thank you for making it possible for me to walk into work without shrinking. The next read, my daughter saw you on television and said, that lady looks like us. She kept reading, one after another, until her vision blurred. Every letter was a fragment of the same truth. Her courage had become their permission. Malik watched her silently. You did not just change a company, he said. You changed an expectation. Vanessa closed the last letter carefully. Then we cannot stop now. Expectation without follow-through becomes disappointment. At that moment, her phone buzzed. A message flashed from Thomas Grayson. Board request. Emergency session. 5 p.m. She sighed. It seems some expectations are less enthusiastic. When she entered the boardroom hours later, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The directors sat in stiff silence, the polished table between them like a line drawn in glass. Thomas began. Vanessa, the board acknowledges your intentions were noble, but the consequences are severe. Stockholders are demanding reassurance. Some want you to step down as CEO temporarily. Vanessa listened without flinching. Temporarily or permanently? Thomas hesitated. Temporarily until the audit storm settles. She looked around the table, studying each face. You all want calm, but calm never built anything worth keeping. Let me ask you, which matters more, our comfort or our credibility? One director spoke up nervously. We are not questioning your leadership, Miss Clark. We are questioning timing. Timing, Vanessa repeated softly. If I had waited for the right time, I would still be waiting for permission. Her words landed hard. The room fell silent again. Thomas leaned forward. Vanessa, the truth is, some of us are frightened. You have taken a stand that no one in this industry has dared to take. But the system we depend on, it punishes people who make it feel small. Vanessa's gaze sharpened. Then maybe it is time the system feels small for once. Thomas sat back, exhaling. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Pride, regret, maybe both. You always were the fire I could not contain, he said quietly. She stood, placing both hands on the table. I am not fire, Thomas. I am reflection. The flames you see are yours. I am just holding up the mirror. No one spoke after that. The meeting ended without a vote. The board members filed out slowly, each man and woman caught in private thought. When the door closed behind the last of them, Vanessa remained alone. She turned toward the window. The city stretched before her, restless and radiant. Somewhere out there, someone was watching her story unfold, wondering if they too could speak truth without being broken by it. She whispered to the skyline, Yes, you can. Carla entered quietly, holding a folder marked Legal Department. Should I cancel the evening interviews? She asked. Vanessa shook her head. No, let them come. Every question is an opportunity. As Carla left, Vanessa took one final look at the letters on her desk. She picked one up, the smallest, written in blue ink by hand. It read, You made them see us. Now we see ourselves. She folded it carefully and placed it in her blazer pocket, close to her heart. Outside, the storm clouds began to clear again, revealing streaks of gold against the fading blue. For the first time since the leak, the air felt lighter. And as night returned to the city, the reflection of Summit Holdings Tower glowed in every window across the skyline, no longer just a monument to wealth, but a signal that truth, once spoken, could no longer be put back into silence. The following morning, the city awoke to headlines that read like scripture. The Clark Doctrine, Transparency as Power. Banking's new voice of truth. When integrity becomes policy, For the first time in decades, the financial world was not talking about profits or projections, it was talking about ethics. Inside Summit Holdings, Vanessa Clark walked through the marble halls like a woman who carried both the weight and the promise of change. Her staff greeted her with quiet nods, their faces lit by something she had not seen before: trust. Not blind loyalty, not fear. Genuine trust. Carla followed her into the elevator, tablet in hand. The board has been flooded with public messages, she said. Small business owners, activists, students. People are calling this the Clark Standard. Vanessa smiled faintly. Standards are fragile. Let us make sure this one survives the applause. The elevator doors opened to the top floor. Malik Johnson was waiting outside her office, his expression serious. We have an issue, he said. Vanessa's calm did not waver. Tell me. Malik handed her a folder. A group of senior executives, 8 of them, have resigned overnight. They claim the company's new direction compromises their ability to manage effectively. They are taking clients with them. Carla gasped. That could mean millions in lost contracts. Vanessa flipped through the folder without panic. Then let them go. You cannot reform an institution by keeping the architects of its rot. Malik nodded slowly. I thought you would say that, but there is more. They have been feeding statements to the press. They are framing your leadership as reckless, emotional, a threat to corporate stability. Vanessa closed the folder. Emotional, she repeated softly, as though tasting the word. That is the label they give a woman when her conviction inconveniences them. Carla frowned. Should we respond? Yes, Vanessa said. But not with defense, with demonstration. She turned toward the window, watching the morning sun rise over the skyline. Set up a press conference for noon. Invite the public. Invite our employees. Invite anyone who ever wondered if truth could coexist with power. At 12 o'clock sharp, the auditorium was full again. This time, the energy was not tense, it was electric. The air vibrated with expectation, and cameras were already live. Vanessa stepped onto the stage wearing a black suit, her presence commanding without effort. Good afternoon, she began, her voice measured but resonant. I have heard the accusations reckless, unstable, too emotional for leadership. I will not argue with them, because if emotion means caring deeply about justice, then yes, I am guilty. If stability means preserving systems that oppress quietly, then I am proud to be unstable. The audience stirred, clapping softly. She continued. 8 executives have resigned. Let me be clear, our doors are open for those who believe in truth, and closed to those who fear it. Summit Holdings will not collapse because of absence. It will evolve because of integrity. Her words struck like measured lightning, controlled, bright, undeniable. She clicked a button on the remote. The screen behind her lit up with a slide showing new partnerships, community credit programs, diversity investment funds, minority-owned business initiatives. This is what leadership looks like after bias, she said. It looks like inclusion becoming infrastructure. A journalist raised his hand. Miss Clark, do you think your approach will alienate investors who prefer a traditional model? Vanessa met his gaze directly. Progress always alienates comfort. But comfort has never built a better world. Applause erupted, stronger this time, and when it faded, Vanessa added quietly, We are not just repairing a brand, we are redefining what banking means. A financial institution should not measure worth by appearance, but by effort. Not by history, but by hope. From the corner of the stage, Malik caught her eye, his expression half disbelief, half admiration. Carla stood beside him, whispering, She is rewriting the language of power. When the conference ended, Vanessa returned to her office. The adrenaline that had carried her through the speech began to fade, replaced by exhaustion. She removed her jacket and sank into her chair. Carla entered a few minutes later with a tray of tea. That was extraordinary, she said. Social media is calling you the most influential woman in corporate America. Vanessa gave a quiet laugh. Influence is temporary. Change is what matters. Carla hesitated. Do you ever get tired of being strong all the time? Vanessa looked up, her expression soft but steady. Strength is not a mask, Carla. It is a discipline. You learn it the same way you learn patience, one humiliation at a time. She turned back to the window. The city looked different now, less like a battlefield, more like a field waiting to grow. Her phone buzzed on the desk. It was a call from Thomas Grayson. She answered. Vanessa. His voice was calm, almost reverent. I watched your address. You have done what none of us had the courage to attempt. Then try now, she said gently. I already have, he replied. I am stepping down as chairman. It is time the future stopped asking permission from the past. Vanessa paused. Thomas. He cut her off softly. Do not thank me. Just keep going. Do what we never did. When the call ended, She sat in silence for a moment. Then she rose, crossed to the wall of glass, and pressed her hand against the window. Below her, the streets shimmered with movement, people crossing intersections, buses rolling, storefronts opening. Everyday life, untouched and yet entirely changed. Carla's voice broke the quiet. What happens now? Vanessa smiled faintly. Now we make sure this was not just a moment. We make it a model. Carla nodded slowly. And after that? Vanessa looked out at the endless horizon. After that, she said, we build a world where women like me are not a surprise. Outside, a single sunbeam broke through the clouds, illuminating the Summit Holdings logo on the tower, a symbol reborn. And in that light, Vanessa Clark stood still, knowing that her revolution had crossed the threshold from controversy to legacy. The following week began with the kind of quiet that always comes before transformation. The storm of headlines had settled into steady coverage, and the chaos had evolved into conversation. Around the country, news panels debated not the scandal, but the structure, how bias had been embedded for so long in systems built to look neutral. In that shift, something irreversible had begun. Inside Summit Holdings, Vanessa Clark's leadership had become the heartbeat of that shift. Departments were no longer just managing transactions, they were managing conscience. Training programs, review boards, community outreach, all the pieces she had envisioned were now in motion. But with change came resistance, and resistance had simply become smarter. That morning, Carla entered her office holding a sleek envelope sealed in silver. This came by courier, she said. No return address. Vanessa took it, sliding a letter from inside. The handwriting was sharp and deliberate. Miss Clark, you have shaken a foundation that was not built for you to stand on. Beware what happens when the people who profited from silence decide to take their voices back. Not everyone applauds your revolution. No signature, just a corporate seal pressed faintly into the corner, a circle she recognized instantly. The emblem of the National Financial Council, an industry lobby with deep political ties and even deeper fears of disruption. Vanessa placed the letter on the desk, unreadable. Fear is flattering, she said quietly. Carla frowned. They are threatening you, Vanessa. You should forward this to security. I will, Vanessa said, but her tone was calm. This is not a threat. It is a reminder. When you change the rules, the rule makers come to reclaim their power. Carla hesitated. Do you think they will try to remove you? Vanessa met her gaze. If they could, they already would have. People in power never act early, they act desperate. She turned toward the window, watching the city hum below. Call Malik. I want an emergency meeting with the communications and legal teams. We will get ahead of this before it becomes another headline. By noon, the war room was filled. Screens displayed every major media outlet, stock trend, and social sentiment metric. Malik stood at the front, tapping the screen. The letter is circulating in smaller financial circles. They are framing you as dangerous, someone who threatens economic stability by politicizing banking. Vanessa leaned forward, her tone even. Truth is not political, Malik. It is just inconvenient. Carla added, the council has influence with federal regulators. If they spin this as a breach of fiduciary duty, they could push for sanctions. Let them, Vanessa said. Sanctions are just punishment disguised as principle. We will answer with transparency. Again. Malik nodded slowly. So you want to go public with this? Yes, she said. We will not let others define our narrative. Prepare a statement. And this time, I want it to come from the entire leadership team, not just me. That evening, the headquarters transformed once again into a broadcast studio. Cameras, microphones, a sea of press badges. But this time, the stage was not Vanessa's alone. Standing beside her were representatives from every department, diverse in color, age, and background. When she stepped up to the podium, her voice was steady, resonant, and deliberate. I have received a letter suggesting that my efforts to bring transparency to this industry have made certain people uncomfortable. They are correct. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd, soft but genuine. Vanessa continued, reform is supposed to make the powerful uncomfortable. It is how evolution works. But let me be clear, this is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of repair. We are not tearing down institutions, we are rebuilding trust. Behind her, the employees stood like a living testament to that idea. Malik, Carla, Ryan, Elena, each one a symbol of what change could look like when dignity became policy. She went on, to those who believe that truth threatens stability, I offer this reminder. Real stability is built on fairness, not fear. This company will not be intimidated into silence. And if speaking honestly costs us comfort, then we can afford the loss. Oh, applause filled the room, but Vanessa did not smile. She waited until it faded, then lowered her tone. To the National Financial Council, and to every institution that still mistakes silence for order, I invite you to join us instead of hiding behind your privilege. The world is watching now. The era of hidden prejudice is over. The age of accountable power has begun. The statement hit the airwaves instantly. Within hours, networks across the country were replaying her words. Social media exploded with praise, but also backlash. Some called her a visionary, others called her a threat to capitalism. Vanessa sat in her office that night, alone again, the city lights flickering like restless thoughts. She could feel the world pulling at her adoration on one side, opposition on the other. She had not asked to be a symbol, but symbols rarely get to choose their shape. Carla knocked softly and stepped inside. The statement went viral. Even the Treasury Secretary reposted it with the caption, "Courage is policy now." Vanessa smiled faintly. Good. Let them see courage in a woman who refuses to shrink. Carla hesitated before speaking again. Do you ever wish you could just rest? Let someone else carry it for a while? Vanessa turned from the window. Rest is for after justice learns how to walk without me. Carla exhaled, half a sigh, half admiration. You make it sound easy. It is not, Vanessa said softly. But it is necessary. There is a difference. When Carla left, Vanessa walked to her desk. The silver-sealed letter still lay there, untouched. She picked it up and looked at the embossed circle of power pressed into its paper. Then, without hesitation, she tore it clean in half. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, soft, but steady, like a promise echoing through the city. And as lightning flashed across the skyline, Vanessa whispered to the dark glass, "Let them come." The louder they resist, the clearer the truth becomes. Far below, in neighborhoods once overlooked by the same banks that had denied her years ago, something remarkable was happening. New community branches were opening. Lines of customers stretched down sidewalks. And in every window, the Summit Holdings logo glowed no longer a symbol of exclusion, but of ownership reclaimed. Vanessa Clark's revolution had survived its first counterattack. And as dawn approached, painting the horizon in gold, she knew that what had started as a single act of defiance had become something far greater. A movement, no letter, no lobby, no legacy could ever silence again. The following days moved like the deep rhythm of a drum, steady, resonant, unstoppable. Across the country, the name Vanessa Clark had become more than a person. It had become a principle. Talk shows, op-eds, university lectures, and even church sermons invoked her words. Real stability is built on fairness, not fear. It was quoted, repeated, painted across protest signs and subway walls. But while the world discussed her, Vanessa stayed focused. She refused to become a celebrity of conscience. She remained a builder. Inside Summit Holdings, her reforms deepened. Every department now had equity officers. Employees tasked with ensuring dignity was not just discussed, it was enforced. Branches hosted community workshops on financial literacy. Internships opened for young entrepreneurs from neighborhoods once ignored. And Vanessa made sure her door stayed open to anyone at any level who wanted to speak truth without fear. On a quiet Thursday afternoon, Ryan Cooper entered her office. He had traded his security uniform for a sharp Navy suit, his new position as Director of Employee Integrity Programs. "We finished the pilot training," he said proudly. 73% of employees said it changed how they saw customers and themselves. Vanessa smiled. "Good. The other 27%? They said it made them uncomfortable." She leaned back. "Then it is working." Ryan grinned. "There is something else. Elena Morales asked me to give you this." He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a photograph Elena standing in front of a newly opened Heritage Trust branch, surrounded by young trainees. On the back, in careful handwriting, were the words, "Because of you, I stayed. Because of me, they will begin." Vanessa held the photo for a moment. Her voice softened. "Sometimes change is not loud. It is inherited." Ryan nodded, emotion tightening his throat. "Thank you, Miss Clark, for all of this. Thank me by making sure no one ever has to experience what I did," she said gently. "That will be enough." When he left, Vanessa looked around her office. For the first time, it felt alive, like the walls themselves carried a heartbeat. Later that evening, she joined Malik and Carla on the rooftop terrace for a rare pause. The city glowed beneath them, alive with movement and light. Carla broke the silence first. "Do you ever think about what comes after this? After all the press and politics fade?" Vanessa sipped her tea before answering. "After the noise fades, what remains is the structure. That is what matters. If a system can function with fairness after you step away, then you have succeeded." Malik smiled. "That sounds like legacy." "No," she said. "It sounds like responsibility fulfilled." For a moment, no one spoke. The city wind whispered between them, carrying the hum of traffic and the distant pulse of possibility. Carla finally said, "You know, there is talk that universities want to include your case in leadership programs." Vanessa laughed softly. "Then maybe they will finally teach that empathy is not weakness, it is strategy." As night deepened, the trio stood in reflective quiet, each aware they were witnessing history not through spectacle, but through steadiness. Below them, the Summit Holdings logo shimmered across the glass tower, its reflection stretching down to the streets where people of every color now walked into banks that finally looked like they belonged to them too. Vanessa looked up at the stars, faint above the city's glow. "The first time I walked into that lobby," she said, "they saw me as a threat. Now, they see me as a threshold. That is progress." Carla turned to her. "And what about you, Vanessa? What do you see now?" Vanessa smiled, her gaze steady on the horizon. "I see a world that is finally learning how to look back without blinking." The wind carried her words into the night, and the city below seemed to breathe with them. Change was no longer a promise. It was present tense. A week later, the city prepared for the Global Equity Forum, a landmark event bringing together leaders, activists, and policymakers from around the world. It was to be held in the heart of New York City, and the keynote speaker by unanimous request was Vanessa Clark. The invitation had arrived with a simple note: "You changed the rules. Now teach us how." Ugh. Vanessa stood backstage in the vast auditorium, listening to the murmur of thousands gathering beyond the curtain. The energy was electric, but beneath it pulsed something quieter, a collective hope that maybe, finally, the world was ready to listen. Carla adjusted the microphone on Vanessa's jacket. "You know," she whispered, "this might be the first time in history a CEO opens a summit about justice, not profit." Vanessa smiled faintly. "Then let it be the first of many." The announcer's voice echoed through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chief Executive Officer of Summit Holdings, Miss Vanessa Clark." Applause thundered as she walked to the podium, the sound rising like a wave that did not crash but carried her forward. The lights were bright, but her presence steadier than ever. "Good morning," she began, her tone calm and deliberate. "A few months ago, I stood in a bank lobby where dignity was denied in the name of procedure. Today, I stand before you because I refuse to let that denial define me." The room quieted, drawn in by the gravity of her voice. "I was told that power must be quiet, that leadership must not offend, that change must be polite," she said. "But silence did not protect us. It only preserved injustice." She paused, letting the words settle. "True equity is not a favor. It is not a headline. It is a habit, and habits are taught by example." Vanessa glanced toward the front row, where she saw familiar faces: Malik, Carla, Ryan, and Elena, all watching with quiet pride. "When I faced discrimination, I did not raise my voice. I raised my standard, and in doing so, I learned something vital. Justice does not always roar. Sometimes, it simply refuses to bow." Applause filled the air again, rising stronger this time, not for her but for what she represented. She closed her speech with words that would echo across headlines and history books. "If fairness feels radical, that means inequality has been normalized for too long. The time for balance is now, not someday, not after permission, now." When she stepped back from the podium, the crowd rose to its feet. The applause did not fade. It deepened, like the sound of collective awakening. Backstage, Carla's eyes were wet. "You did it," she whispered. Vanessa shook her head softly. "No," she said. "We did." And as the lights dimmed and the world outside prepared to carry her words forward, Vanessa Clark stood in the quiet that follows impact, the rare stillness that means something has just shifted forever. 2 months later, The city had settled into a new rhythm, one where her name was no longer just news, but memory woven into policy, conversation, and everyday life. The Clark Standard, once a trending phrase, had become a benchmark in corporate governance across multiple industries. Financial institutions that once dismissed diversity as decoration were now rewriting their codes of ethics, citing Summit Holdings as the model. Vanessa Clark's image was everywhere on magazine covers, in university lecture slides, in documentaries narrated by voices that trembled with admiration. But she rarely watched them. She had never built this movement to be celebrated. She had built it to outlast her. On a bright morning, she stood once again in the same Heritage Trust lobby where everything had begun. The marble floors gleamed. The chandeliers glimmered softly. The air, once heavy with judgment, now carried a quiet respect. Employees nodded to her as she walked by, some nervous, some grateful, all aware of the history echoing in that space. Ryan and Elena accompanied her. Together, they paused before the counter where Paul Stanton had once torn her withdrawal slip in half. Now, in that exact place, a new plaque stood on the wall. It read, "Here, change began not with anger, but with grace. Equality is not granted, it is earned, and then protected." Elena turned to her, voice trembling. "You know, every teller who trains here has to read your case study before they start." Vanessa smiled softly. "Good. Then maybe they will understand that respect is not a policy, it is a practice." Ryan added, "There are whispers that you might step down soon. Is that true?" Vanessa looked around the lobby at the people, the movement, the proof. Stepping down is not the same as stepping away. The foundation is solid now. It does not need my shadow hovering over it forever. Elena nodded, emotion filling her eyes. "Then what will you do?" Vanessa glanced toward the glass doors where sunlight poured in, warm and forgiving. "I will build something else. Maybe not another bank. Maybe something quieter. But I will always build." They stood there for a while, surrounded by the hum of business, the rhythm of fairness at work. As Vanessa stepped outside, the city greeted her like an old friend. A young girl passing by recognized her and whispered to her mother, "That is the lady who owns the bank that listens." Vanessa turned slightly, meeting the girl's wide eyes. She smiled. "No, sweetheart," she said gently. "The bank belongs to everyone now." She walked down the steps and into the sunlight, the sounds of the city rising around her horns, laughter, movement, life. And somewhere between the noise and the light, the world that once doubted her now carried her reflection in every act of fairness that followed. Vanessa Clark did not just change the system. She rewrote what power sounded like when it finally learned to speak with dignity.